Hey there, I'm Kate Snow from Kate's Homeschool Math Help, and today I'm going to show you an easier way to teach fractions. So kids start off understanding numbers, and numbers make sense. So the number 4 counts 4 things, whether it's 4 stars, or 4 feet of rope, or 4 musical notes. It's always 4 things that can be counted. But then they get to fractions, and all of a sudden, fractions aren't things they can count. Most curriculum teach this way of understanding fractions, that 1/4 means 1 part out of 4. Now, this all makes sense for a while, right? If we have a pizza and divide it into 4ths and take one of them, we're taking 1 part out of 4. If we rip a piece of paper in half and then in half again and get 4 parts of it and take one of those, it's 1/4 of the paper. Same with a length of string. If you cut it in 4 parts and take one of them, you have 1/4 of that string. But then things start to get weird. This definition only holds up to a certain point. So, for example, when we get to improper fractions, like 7/4, how can we have 7 parts out of 4? That doesn't really make a lot of sense to kids or to anyone. Or what about if you cut yourself just a sliver of a pie? Well, you took 1 out of 2 parts, but you didn't get half of the pie. And what about if you have a candy bar and a half? And if you take 1/4 of one whole candy bar, do you have a 4th or do you have a 6th? Do you have 1 out of 4 parts or do you have 1 out of 6 parts? And so this definition of defining a fraction as a certain number out of a certain number of parts, it just starts to fall apart. It's okay for getting started, but it doesn't carry kids through to more complicated topics like equivalent fractions, adding and subtracting fractions, or multiplying and dividing. And so whenever I'm teaching math, I like to use the number 1 rule of math. Use what you know to figure out what you don't know. And when it comes to fractions, we want to build on what kids already know about counting to actually help them understand fractions. So here's what I mean. Instead of teaching kids that 1/4 means 1 out of 4 parts, it's a lot easier for them to understand fractions if we teach them that the top number counts and the bottom number tells what you're counting. So in this case, the top number counts. It says there's 1 of something. The bottom number tells what you're counting. We're counting 4ths. So here's what this looks like. So here's our 1/4, and first we need to teach them about this bottom number, the 4th. We teach them that we have to have equal parts and the correct number of parts for there truly to be 4ths. So you can see here in the triangle, we've divided into 4 equal parts, or as equal as my sketch can get. This square, it's divided into 4 equal parts, and so is the circle. So each of them is divided into 4ths. But then we also need to teach kids what 4ths are not. And so here's 3 examples of what 4ths are not. This triangle isn't divided into 4ths because the parts aren't equal. Same with this rectangle down here. There's 4 parts, but they're not all equal to each other. And in the circle, the parts are equal, but there's only 3 of them, so those aren't 4ths. And so this is the crucial first step, is teaching kids what that bottom number means, that it tells what we're counting, and making sure that kids understand there need to be an equal parts, and they have to match the number on the bottom for them to truly be 4ths. And then when we're teaching kids then what to do with this definition, here's the questions we ask. Well, what kind of part do I have? Here I have 4ths. Yep, that matches my diagram. There's 4 different parts. They're all equal. How many do I have? I have 1 of them. So to represent this diagram, we write 1/4, 1/4. And the beautiful thing about this definition is that kids can use it in a variety of complicated situations. They're not limited by it like the 1 out of 4 parts definition. So for example, 7/4 now makes sense. What kind of part am I talking about? 4ths. How many do I have? 7. It's easy to see then what that looks. So here's a picture of what 7/4 might look like. And then remember this one, taking 1 little sliver out of a pie? Instead of thinking, well, it's 1 out of 2 parts, we think, oh, well, what kind of part am I taking? Eyeballing this pie, I'd say I took a 12th. But it forces kids to think about, well, what kind of part is it? Not just to look at how many parts there are. And then remember this candy bar situation? I have 1 candy bar plus half of a candy bar. if I take this little chunk up here, do I have a fourth or a sixth? Well, when we define the fractions this way, kids always have to be thinking about what is the whole. I have 1/4 of a candy bar, right? If I take this whole candy bar, I've divided into 4 equal parts. There's 4 of them, so I've taken 1/4. However, out of all of my candy, there's 6 parts. And so if I'm talking about what fraction of all of my candy I do have 1/6. Both 1/4 or 1/6 could be correct answers. And this definition helps kids to think about what the whole really represents. And so that's just a simple thing that you can do to help your kids understand fractions better. Teach them that the top number, the numerator, counts and then the bottom number, the denominator tells what you're counting. If you'd like to learn more tricks for understanding fractions and for teaching them well to your child, check out wtmacademy.com/courses-for-adults. I'm teaching a 3-week session on fractions that will help you understand everything you need to know to teach your kids fractions. We'll look at fraction concepts, equivalent fractions, and then addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division so you can teach them with confidence. Thanks for listening and happy math.